Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
We are two passionate movie lovers who love talking about movies passionately.
Welcome to The Next Reel.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Sword of Trust is over. It's buried from the history books by the deep state.
What you were looking at is a genuine relic that supports the actual truth, which is the South won the war.
Okay. The South won the war?
That's right. This is something you want to keep under your hat till you're ready to
Seems
not
like
keep
pretty
it
big
under your
news.
hat.
Best way to do this is through concrete evidence.
Is this antique roadshow for racists?
Up to $50,000.
God damn it.
What's the deal?
70-30 sounds fair to me.
Don't touch.
I can't touch the tag.
Don't touch the tag.
Honey, 70-30?
Is it 70 for us?
No.
No deal.
30 for us. No deal.
There can be other offers on this, because the word's out.
Word's out.
Came here looking for something. Heard you have it.
Can we narrow it down a little?
We're looking for a sword.
All right.
A sword.
Why was that so hard?
It wasn't hard.
Wasn't hard.
Why did we have to take that route to get there?
30 seconds to get there. It
Didn't
wasn't
take
that long.
Let's just be on the same page. We're just trying to sell this thing for a lot of money, and that's that.
Bam.
This is definitely how people die. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they're capable of.
We're in this together. Me, you, the two ladies. We just got to get that $40,000. I'm so hard right now. I can barely keep my mind straight.
Wait a minute. Are you using that word right?
Down country like this, wind up in a ditch dead and nobody'd ever find you.
You spend a lot of time thinking, like, how can these people think like this?
No,
right?
you're right, man.
We're in the brain of that.
Yeah, we're about to find out.
Apparently it's carpeted.
So, Pete, have you heard about these membership plans we have over at The Next Reel?
Membership plans? Tell me more.
For just $1 a month, practically nothing, you can become a one-reeler member and get access to member channels over on Discord.
But I'm already a member on Discord.
Yeah, but you only get access to some of the channels.
Okay, so what's on these member channels?
Oh, you know that Saturday matinee show?
The one that I get every Monday, where the hosts talk about news and new trailers and play movie-related games and challenge each other with their list of films related somehow to the films reviewed that week?
That's the one. Members get access to the Show Talk channel, where they can vote on the lists each week.
You mean there's a vote? I love voting. Mom always said, vote early, vote often.
Now, if you bump your membership up to the two-reeler tier, which costs a measly $5 a month, it's practically the same you'd pay for one of those fancy coffee drinks, you get so much more.
What more could there be?
Well, two-reelers not only get everything the one-reelers get,
That's a given.
but they also get access to live streams to watch shows when they actually record or anytime thereafter.
You mean I have to stop doing this in my bathrobe?
Two-reelers also get to be a part of a pre-show chat with hosts before every Film Board episode.
I like it. I like it.
Two-reelers get every show before regular listeners and without ads.
You mean I don't have to sit through this? Count me in.
But the best benefit of all, members get bonus member-only episodes.
I love that.
It's an exciting time to be alive. What can I say?
So how do I sign up?
It's easy. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership?
thenextreel.com/membership. Access to member channels in Discord, early access to shows, access to live streams, and member bonus episodes. Sign up today.
I worry I'm going to offend somebody with this movie, Andy.
Do you think Lynn offended people first?
I think she didn't worry about it for sure. I've been watching cast interviews of her talking about this movie, and she suffers no fools. Let's just say that. It is delightful to watch her talk about this. I wanted to start with a question for you, though, personally, not related directly to the movie. Can you think of something that you believe that you're just sure no one else believes? That other people would say, oh, Andy, he believes that thing. He must be nuts.
Yes.
What?
I believe I can fly.
And you just haven't figured it out yet?
Right. Exactly. I'm working on it in private, but I'm almost there.
So glad you started talking about it on the podcast, though.
That's right. But don't tell anyone.
Right. I feel like mine is related to yours, not flight, but I do sometimes events encourage me to believe that I can read people's minds.
Well, you have convinced me of that from all of these shows all these years. How does he know?
How does he know? We're talking about
the only time you've actively used it against me is when we were ranking 2001. That's the only time that I was like, I know he's using it against me.
Andy, if I had that power, why do you think Under the Cherry Moon is at the bottom of our list?
I think you're using it to throw me off. Throw me off the trail.
We are talking about, this is the last movie in our Lynn Shelton series. This is 2019's Sword of Trust. She goes back to basics, her first truly improv film since Sister Sister, which we also talked about. And I struggled with those movies. a little bit more than her more scripted movies. And then we get Sort of Trust, and she completely changes my worldview. What did you think of this film, Andy?
I had a lot of fun with it. I think that they were playing with ideas and belief systems, and I found them doing a lot of just, kind of a fun exploration of the world of the South and the way people kind of latch onto things that, I don't know. I feel like it's very relevant today in the way that people buy into something because there is, quote, evidence out there in some way, shape, or form. And I found it to be pretty funny and insightful also just about kind of human nature. And even just the whole idea of greed, of just going along with it just to get money. Like, I think there's a lot of things that speak to today. And so I quite enjoyed it.
Doesn't seem like you were as impacted by this one as Outside In last week.
No, but it's also just a very different type of film, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few things in it that I didn't connect with as well. But largely, I still had a lot of fun with this one. And certainly, it would be an easy one to return to and rewatch.
I could not agree more. I just showed the trailer to my kids. They can't wait to watch it. Of course, the only thing they're talking about is Jon Bass and his enthusiasm in the pawn shop. We have to get that money, and I'm so hard right now, I can't even think straight. And are you sure you're using that right? Like, that has become a common...
I'm pretty sure. I got to go into the other room.
I'm pretty sure. It is a fantastic film. I feel like I wanted to start with Marc Maron because he was, I just watched his two of his comedy specials, the Netflix comedy specials, and they were great. I connect with Marc Maron's kind of comedy. I have listened to his podcast a bunch. He's one of those where the format is so long that sometimes I subscribe for a long time and then I don't, and I subscribe for a long time and then I don't. But I call myself a Marc Maron fan of his comedy. I am not as exposed to Maron as an actor. Apart from seeing him in kind of bit roles, smaller parts in other movies, Almost Famous, right? Sure, he's angry promoter and Almost Famous. So I was genuinely surprised at how well he did in this movie. And frankly, how well he connected or served as sort of that connecting tissue in every scene he was in. Like, he just felt so natural and fluid and easy in every scene, no matter what he was doing. I just thought he was terrifically organic and fun to watch. I
find he works better. Like, he didn't completely work for me. And if there's an issue I had with the film, it's Maron. I like him so much in the bulk of the film when he's the kind of cantankerous pawn shop owner who's kind of taking people for their wares at low prices and totally lying to them about why he's giving them such little money. Like, I really enjoyed that character. I totally agree the way that he had his relationship with Nathaniel, Jon Bass's character, who worked with him. Like, that pairing was so fantastic. I loved everything that they did on screen together. And I love the relationship they end up making with Mary and Cynthia as those two come into the story.
Okay, so it sounds like so far you're on Team Pete.
For the most part. Where I start kind of not going along with Mel and the way that Marc Maron plays him is when we get into situations that are potentially dangerous, because I start feeling like, well, I'm not sensing anything from him. Like, when he's in the room with the Kingpin and they're talking and that guy's threatening them with the toy room or killing them and stuff, I just didn't feel any sense of threat from Maron. And I couldn't tell if he just wasn't playing it well or what, but I just didn't buy that as much. And so I buy him a lot more when he's the cantankerous person, but once he's in a scene where he's actually actively being confronted, that's where I kind of struggled with him more.
Well, I think we need to separate the climax of the film. I think we need to separate kind of some Act 3 issues, because I too share some Act 3 issues that I feel like I struggle with a little bit. But I, when I'm talking about my adoration of Maron in this context, it really is the stuff that you like the cantankerous pawn shop owner is really great. The adventure of like figuring out how much to charge when the representative from the believers shows up and he's examining the sword. Like, it's just fantastic work and really beautifully subtle comedy that I think he does really, really well. I love the setting. I love everything about the pawn shop character. Jon Bass is another great addition to this cast. Their partnership is truly funny, and I do like the way that it kind of unravels how their relationship got started when we get to the van, and he talks about, I asked him to watch the shop and he's still here. I think that's a really great moment. So I think there's just a lot to really appreciate about what they did here. I think this whole ensemble is just great at what they do on screen.
Just to heap more praise onto Maron, because I think that we both must just have similar issues with that kind of third act.
Yeah.
But the other element that I found really strong with Maron that I completely bought into and I loved was the relationship story that he had with Deirdre, played by Lynn Shelton. And this, when he relays the story of their past as they're all sitting in the back of the carpeted murder van, I really loved that story. It was a really touching, powerful story, and how he got out of that, the heavy drugs and everything, and how she's still there, and the way the story resolves as he kind of finds a way to kind of make some semblance of peace. I was really touched. So there were elements that really worked for me, the way that he worked in the story. It was just pretty much the moments when he's being threatened that I never connected, but those moments of the real kind of the drama. So it's the drama and the comedy work. It's just the fear and the horror that don't for me.
Okay, fear and horror don't check out. Yeah, Deirdre's part, it was a little bit confusing to me, and I wonder if that was another thing that might have been excised in the improv process, because it felt a little bit loose ended. They introduced this amazing, like, heart-wrenching past relationship for Mel, and she's in it for just a bit as a junkie, and it's not even clear she's a junkie until we hear a lot of the backstory.
I thought it was pretty clear from our
conversation.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, I guess it is pretty clear. He tells her pretty much what's going to happen. So, and there are a number of conversations, I think, in there, and with the neighbor who runs the restaurant, who comes into their store every now and again in the beginning. But it just felt like that, was that character useful for the story? Or was it just kind of stunty?
That's a good question. I don't think it helps the story in any way. I think it fleshes out Mel as a character, and I really enjoy the journey he takes on. I really enjoy his relationship with her and how it's portrayed in the film, especially the way that he's kind of closed the door to her, but then that conversation with Mary and Cynthia, and they're like, have you told her you still love her? Which I thought was kind of interesting. It kind of came out of the blue the way that line played, but it also, I bought that it hit him, and the way that the film then ends, where he comes back and now he's in this place where he's not going to get back with her, but he is going to get her car fixed so that she can at least get around potentially for this job, buy her groceries. He almost knocks on the door, but he doesn't. He just leaves him there. I was like, okay, there's something interesting here. But it also felt like it was from a different movie. And I think that's your problem. And I think that ends up being my problem. I really liked it. It just didn't feel connected.
It felt like it came out of Outside In. Like, it was tonally, it just felt like it was you're right, part of a different movie.
Yeah. But I mean, I liked Shelton in that small role. Yeah.
I like Shelton as an actor.
Yeah. I do too. I just haven't seen her much. And, I guess I'm okay with that, because I think I enjoy just what she's doing story-wise. I don't necessarily need to see her acting.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the ending, the sort of third act. As they agree to go on their adventure, and they get in the panel van. I really like the moment where they all show up and they manage to manipulate the representatives, say, we're not going to get in your, what was that, at El Dorado or something. It doesn't have enough seats in it. And so he says, I'm going to have to go get a new car. I have a new car. And he brings back this carpeted panel, or this carpeted like moving truck,
right,
and puts them all in the back of the moving truck. I thought that was a great bit, a great sort of comic moment. And then we have this scene of sincerity, which is, it was a nice beat. It slows us down in the movie, and I thought that was really charming. Then we get to the farm. I sort of feel like we enter Scooby-Doo resolution territory here.
Yes.
Right. This is where I struggle, that it sort of leans so heavily on this sort of vaudevillian resolution that everything is a twist. Every character has a different motivation. Like every principal sort of new bad guy we meet. Then we were at the Kingpin, and it turns out, my goodness, he's just a rich guy trying to take these artifacts off the market, and doesn't believe any of it, that the South won the war at all. That felt underwhelming to me. That felt like structurally unresolved. As much fun as I was having leading up to the movie, I got a sad trombone feeling in my heart at the end. And I think maybe it goes to how it was performed. I think maybe your point is right there. Like I got the feeling suddenly that I'm watching a live show at the Groundlings, and they're just trying to end a bit.
Right. It felt that way. And even when Hogjaws comes back in.
Hogjaws, such an awesome name.
Oh, it's a great name.
Please.
Great name. Well, obviously they're having fun with the names. We got Hogjaws, Kingpin, Screen Door.
What was the bit when he says Hogjaws? He says, Mr. Jaws, Jaws.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what his name really is.
But when he comes in and is just like making them dance and stuff, I'm like, really? I mean,
really?
It hit a point where the comedy just kind of, it felt like they were doing improv and they were just trying to figure it out, and they were just making it up as they went along, doing something that seemed kind of, oh, this will be funny. But it in the context of the story, I didn't understand, like, why is Hogjaws now making them dance like, a puppet and things like that? Like, I stopped kind of buying into all of that, and it kind of went into spiraled a little bit into kind of territory that wasn't as strong for the story that they had set up.
Yeah, I think that was my issue too. I felt like, as great as their character relationships were that they sort of built over the first hour, it all just kind of falls apart when Nathaniel sort of comes to the door and says, "Where's the bathroom?" And it just is this chaos that felt just sort of, I've seen it. I've been around that corner before, and I felt like the rest of the movie was dealing with some things that were real, that were, in a funny way, they were asking these questions of each other and of us as viewers. Just because I believe crazy things doesn't mean I'm crazy, right? And sort of pushing those buttons in, I think, a really interesting way. And it is thanks to a really cool concept, an idea and a cast that is smart and capable of bringing some real heart and intelligence to those discussions through their comedy on screen. And I really applaud that. And I feel like the third act does not live up to what they started with. That's frustrating.
It is. I mean, they're obviously having fun. And honestly, I don't mind the Kingpin's take on the whole thing. Like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, it's actually kind of an interesting angle to take with that, where this is his setup. But I kept going down this road as I was thinking about it more. I'm like, well, all of the people he works with, at least the two who come in to take Hogjaws down into the toy room, must be in on it with him.
So is Hogjaws the only one who isn't?
Right. And so I hit this point where I'm like, where's the line? And, so I started struggling with all of that the more I thought about it. And so that's that's why it gets frustrating for me. I just felt like they could have even ended it in a similar fashion, but not necessarily going down kind of that the silly action ending that they seemed to decide upon. And that's, it just made it frustrating.
Yeah, me too. I really loved the relationship between Mary and Cynthia. I thought they were so... I thought it was great, the way they worked, the way they sort of worked into the story, right? They inherit this house and they find this sword. They don't actually get the house because there was, the financial arrangements didn't work out that way, but they do get this sword. And the sword is a beautiful Civil War era sword, and it is in the letters of authenticity from her uncle or father
or
grandpappy, it says that this was a sword that was surrendered by Sherman to Lee,
or was it Sheridan?
Or Sheridan at Chickamauga, the Battle of
Chickenfoot,
and that it clearly demonstrates that the South won the war of Northern aggression. And you can see it in this picture right here, a picture which was hand-drawn. It was a painting. That was supposedly the authenticity of this particular artifact. And that becomes the sort of trust. And their integration, the way they talk to each other, the way they work together, it's very clear that Michaela Watkins and Jillian Bell, they have a great relationship together, and they've worked together in the past, and it's just super clear that they are experienced performers together. I believed every bit of their relationship, even as there were some kind of stereotypical tropes of a lesbian couple that kind of rear its head in their relationship. I still found them funny.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, I really enjoyed them as a couple. I bought it. It always just kind of, I don't know, it played nicely. I really enjoyed the way all of that unfolded with their relationship, with the story of how they met and all that, the escape rooms that they're wanting to do. Like, it made for kind of a fun relationship between the two of them that I enjoyed. And neither of them are people I've seen a lot. I know they're doing a lot of movies and TV and stuff like that. And they seem to pop up in a lot more bit parts and stuff. I missed Brittany Runs a Marathon, which I know was a big thing for Jillian Bell as far as,
that was where role. She just sort of blew up, right? That's where she started getting cast and everything.
Exactly. And I mean, she was one of the producers on it too. So it's like, but I mean, that was like very recent, like before that. And she started out in Bridesmaids, I mean, but in all these little parts, like The Master and 22 Jump Street and Inherent Vice and Goosebumps and the Angry Birds movie. So she's kind of all over the place now, which is fun to see, because I really enjoy what she, like her presence. I enjoy what she's doing. And Michaela Watkins also, you said that they have worked together before. I don't know as much of her, but when I look back, I'm like, oh, well, sure. I saw her in The Backup Plan. She was in Wanderlust. So they carry a lot of presence, and just the way that they perform together always made me believe their relationship. So I had a great time watching them. It does get a little, again, I start going into that territory toward the end. I think all my problems with the film really settle on everything at the farm. That's where I constantly find issues with all sorts of things. Like, even the fact that Mary and Mel, like none of them, the four of them, had said, hey, let's lock down the story before we go into this so that we're telling the same thing. Like, why didn't they just have that conversation instead of still stumbling over the whole thing? And so a lot of things like that really frustrated me, but it doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the characters or their relationships.
Let's talk about the improv stuff, because I think that's, that has been a perennial refrain for us in the films that we've talked about with Lynn Shelton. What works, what doesn't, because this film was so heavily improvised on set.
Because, I mean, this one, you did find out that they actually did improv on set.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which in the world of filmmaking, having been a line producer on films before, like, it just stresses me out knowing that that's how people are going to do this. Like, okay, we've got a vague idea what we're going to shoot today. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to figure out, okay, well, what do you need How many days are we going to kind of plan on this location? How many days do we need to have this location ready? What props do we need? And if they're improving it, it becomes so much more challenging. I find it really interesting that they do it that way. But especially on low budgets, it just seems like such a tricky way to kind of jump into putting a story together. So there are times it works really well. I don't know when was improv and when wasn't, but if there was any improv going on in the pawn shop or in the back of the van, like, I think that all works. There are things that pop up like that escape room thing that I'm like, I liked the way that it came into the conversation and stuff. The challenge I have with improv, and this is, I think, where I end up finding a lot of my challenge with Shelton and her stories, is that I think the power of great screenwriting is that it allows for opportunities to create these great setups and payoffs. And what happens oftentimes in improv is you start setting these things up that never pay off anywhere. It ends up just sitting there. And if it's not really there to help move the story forward or move a character forward or things like that, then why is it there? And that's where I start running into some of these challenges with it, because, like, I loved the escape room bit, but then I was like, okay, is that going to come back into the story in some way? Like, what do we need to know about the fact that she's wanting to run an escape room? Is that going to help us later on in some capacity?
Shouldn't that have been the third act, some sort of mechanism to actually create an escape room?
Yeah, or something where, they're thinking like you would if you were in it. Yeah, this is an escape room. We just have to use our skills. Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you set something like that up, especially when you're going to a place that has the toy room in the basement and all this crazy stuff, it's like,
I know.
It ends up creating frustration for me when there is this level of improv in a script.
Well, that is absolutely my experience. And this was the surprise to me for this one, because, the last two movies that were heavily improv, and it comes straight from Maron and Shelton in an interview she did with Seattle Television. She talks about how this is how she does her improv movies. She comes with a big, heavy treatment and they improv it together on set. This was not the kind of thing where they improv it in workshop and then document it like we talked about yesterday, how it's normally done. She really does get the actors working together and do and shoot 12-hour days of them just doing their thing, trying to get the beats across. So there's a 50-page treatment and they know the general story beats that they need to get through. But as Maron says, walking into a scene in that pawn shop, he said, I never knew what I was going to get from my acting partners. I never knew what they were going to say to what I said. I knew we had to get from point A to point G, and somewhere in between, we had to drop all those beats that we needed to get through. And so they had a 14-day shoot, 6 days on, 2 days off, 6 days on, that were just very long days. And they managed to lock this all down. Now, the problems I had with the first two movies that we watched in this series that were more heavily improv is they felt like they were mechanical exercises of delivering beats that didn't make a lot of sense to me in order to get to the third act payoff, which I liked. This movie was exactly the opposite. I thought it was improv'd exceptionally well. I felt great up into the farm. And then it falls apart because, as you say, there are so many opportunities for great payoffs that go unresolved. And so I loved how these characters work together and deliver each other such wonderful opportunities for play that felt authentic and sincere. And then it unraveled. This is kind of my experience with most movies that I hear are improvised, that it's great up until the point that you need payoff, and the payoff doesn't work. It surprises me in hindsight that we didn't get that experience for those first two movies, because now that I know kind of how she works, I would have expected this writ large.
And I mean, I think I did have some issues. I think we both did with Your Sister's Sister, as far as the way that there wasn't the payoff that we were wanting with
it was the wrong payoff
with Duplass's character, right? Like we wanted to see his character find that resolution that he needed, and it wasn't there.
Yeah, you're right.
And that is the big challenge with it. And I think the only way for me that a film could successfully be improved is if they actually have the story, like, okay, this is the story we want to tell. And they know the ending. They know what the payoff is going to be. But then they improv their way there. And maybe that would be a better way. Although I guess that's my sense that they must have had a sense of the way that they were going to end this film.
I feel like it. I mean, if they had essentially a 50-page treatment, that gets you all the way to the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't imagine them saying, okay, we're going to go to this farm and see what happens.
No,
you know?
well, because, yeah, see, they have to have the treatment so they know where the locations are.
Right.
So obviously they have to have a good sense of what the story is. So then I guess to that end, it's not even the improv that's not working. It's just the way that they wrote the resolution. It's just, it ends up being a silly resolution.
It does. And I wonder if that was their objective. I found nothing that says, we really were shooting for madcap at the end of the movie, because that's what it kind of feels like. And I feel like that's the high jump, low ceiling collision that I'm having, right? That it doesn't live up to where the film started. And that makes me sad because I genuinely enjoy my time with this movie. And it's up to that last sort of 15 minutes that it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah, it's frustrating. But, it doesn't mean that it's not an interesting film. And I think there are interesting things that Shelton is doing here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, this is, as we talked about last week, this is her stepping out of the Pacific Northwest. Here we are down in Alabama. I'm guessing they shot here because of tax incentives. I was like, well, maybe that's why they ended up coming to this part of the world. But it also just, it felt so natural in the type of story that she was telling here. Like it fit with the context of this story. And I really enjoyed the way that it played and the way that it kind of felt like, I don't know, there's something about it that felt like authentic. And maybe it's just because they go to the farm, which felt like it could be somewhere down in, I think they said they went from Alabama to Tennessee.
Yeah, they were in Tennessee.
And, I don't know, I guess it didn't strike me as fitting to the place as perhaps we were seeing in the Pacific Northwest. And maybe it's just because she didn't know the area as well, because we really focus on the pawn shop and the farm. And those are really largely the two areas that we spend time in. Still, I do feel like it was nice to see her step out of her comfort zone.
I think this film demonstrates just how she is improved. Right. I mean, there is legit tightness and competence demonstrated in this film that I think is, to me, it feels very much like the sort of merging of her experience with all of the improvisational films and the scripted films. Like it just feels like a solid movie that allows us to talk about, more of the stuff going on in the movie than, sloppy technique or stuff that doesn't connect as well with us. And I really liked that. I liked seeing her, honestly, by now, I liked seeing her get out of the Pacific Northwest and explore a different part of the country and see how it feels. It was nice to be introduced to part of this country, even though it was, as you say, small. Like there's a lot of texture that's delivered in the exterior shots of these strip malls and where the pawn shop is. And I was a little bit frustrated that our tour across the South into Tennessee was in a closed van.
Yeah, that felt TV to me. That felt
sure
very
did.
TV.
I wrote in my notes, is this kind of a bottle episode? Like, they need a lot of heart with a principal cast that's cheap with no set. And it's just it did feel that way to me. I think it accomplished what it needed to accomplish. And there was, I think there was growth that in these characters as they worked together that was ultimately unrealized by the madcapery at the end. And that was frustrating. But I liked the place.
Yeah, and maybe that's, the more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I didn't really see much of it. And maybe it's just, I felt a sense of it, even though I didn't see a whole lot.
Yeah, but as you say, tax incentives go a long way.
Yes, they do, especially in the indie world in which she's back working again. Yeah. Even though it's not with the Duplass brothers again. She's kind of working on her own with her own producers. Producing herself. She's actually one of the producers on this film.
Yeah. Cinematography.
Yeah, new cinematographer again, Jason Oldak, who was a camera operator, and this was his third attempt being a cinematographer. He'd only shot 2 films before as the cinematographer, 5 Star Day and Battle Scars, and not very close together. And so I don't know. I'm curious, kind of to know the direction of choices that she was making as far as kind of leaving her team behind that she had been working with before, coming on with Jason Oldak. The only connection that I can find remotely is Glow, which Marc Maron had been part of. So
yeah, that sure feels like the connection, right? And I wonder how many other sort of crew connections came from his experience with Glow.
Well, and I mean, she had directed some episodes of Glow too, so it's entirely possible they met while filming there and they just connected. I mean, it's who knows? Who knows? I just don't know.
But I liked it. It was fine.
It didn't strike me as anything like that they were trying anything, and that's something that I've noticed with some of the films that she's done before. I feel like Outside In was the one I noticed the most with, even though Laggies was the biggest budget. Outside In, actually, they were playing with depth of field, and it felt a little more like they were doing something unique with it. This one, in a way, it did feel very safe. It did feel very kind of low budget, quick. Let's just make it look right and make it and move through it. Like it in a way, I guess there was kind of that safe lighting TV sensibility about it. Again, perhaps going to the low budget improv style.
I couldn't help but think about our commentary last week on, talking about that depth of field and what they could have done. Let's just say exclusively even in that pawn shop to give us a sense of tone and texture of the place of the sword if they had tried some more ambitious camera operation. And playing with depth of field and playing with isolating focus and playing with all these kinds of things that I think could have made it really fun and visually interesting on top of being just straight up well performed.
Yeah, I have a feeling, and I mean, I've worked on productions that have to move really fast, and one of the things that often is sidelined when you have to move really fast because your production schedule is so incredibly short is how many options you can take to film different options, different angles, play around with it. Unless you're a director who really very specifically knows exactly, I want to shoot it here and then I'm going to cut to this, like he has kind of shot the whole film in their head as you hear about certain directors. When a director is more like, well, I just want to play around with it, especially in an improv situation like this, it doesn't allow for you to play with the cinematography. You don't have that time to say, okay, well, I definitely want to get this shot structured like this, so then I can then cut to that, because you're improvising. And I think, I just don't think that the improv style really allows for you to kind of plan that far ahead with your cinematography. And then you get films that just look pretty straightforward.
It makes so much more sense to just at least say, okay, camera's going to be stable, sound's going to be solid. Can you hear it? Can you see it? Then the actors get to do what they need to do.
Exactly. Right.
Music. Interesting about the music. What'd you think of the guitar?
Well, it was Maron's music is what
it was. Maron, yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't realize until seeing that credit. I'm like, oh, I didn't know he played music. It fit. I didn't think a whole lot of it. But I was like, it kind of felt of the world. So I guess to that end, it was fine.
He's actually quite an accomplished guitar player. And at the end of his podcast, WTF with Marc Maron, he always picks up the guitar and noodles around on it at every episode. And obviously at this point, Shelton knows this about him and knows that he plays the guitar. He's very good, likes his style. And she tells him this and he says, well, hey, I got 500 of these things just sitting on my shelf. So you can use as many of them as you want. So the guitar licks that are noodling around in this movie are all previously released on his podcast, his tracks that he had otherwise already recorded. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it works.
And then you
fine,
see it when he picks up the guitar in the pawn shop. He's quite an able player.
Right.
Like he clearly knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun.
Does. Yeah, it was fun. We should just mention briefly, Tyler Cook was the editor on this film.
Mm-hmm.
I think if there is somebody who really helps a film make any sense when it is an improv style, it is the editor. Because potentially in an improv setting where they're just kind of filming a whole bunch of different takes, trying to figure out what the scene is, the editor ends up being the one who really has to figure out what the story is and how to cut it together for it to make sense. So in just calling out Tyler Cook, I would guess that there was probably a bit of work for him as he was putting this film together.
And also editor on Glow.
Well, there you go.
And Little Fires Everywhere. He went on to Little Fires with Lynn.
Interesting.
But there were no. That was the first. It looks like that was the first work for them together. But they went on to do much more.
Yeah. For a little bit of time at any rate.
I don't think I ran across his episode. This is Maron's episode of WTF. I hadn't heard, I don't think, or made the connection of the whole story about her death, and it's just so crushingly sad because they were together. She had divorced her husband, and they were living together. And she ended up saying, hey, I've got this fever, it won't go down. They go get a COVID test. It wasn't COVID. It just got worse and worse. And eventually he finds her kind of in a delirious state. She passes out on the bathroom floor. And that's the last time he sees her alive in their house. And so he had republished that episode, the first episode where he interviewed her on his show, where I think you actually can hear him falling in love with her. And it's so sweet and so adorable. And of course, now it has his intro where he's just weeping through because he released that episode, 2 days after she died. And he's getting through this, telling that story. I thought it was incredibly touching and worth listening to. And it was neat to kind of revisit that experience.
Yeah, it is tragic, really, what happened to Lynn, and just the fact that she really wasn't even aware of what was going on. It really was just something that all of a sudden just happened. And my understanding is they didn't even know there was an issue until kind of they did the autopsy and discovered what it was that had led to her death, which is just so sad.
It was organ failure related to acute myeloid leukemia, diagnosed after death.
Jeez. You watched some of the Marc Maron comedy specials that she had directed. And
I watched both of them.
Obviously, she had been involved in Glow, directing a few episodes, and he was involved in that show. So there was a number of times they had worked together over the course of their careers, having met early. I think he first interviewed her in like 2015. Is that right? On her,
it was
his
2015,
podcast?
Right?
And so I think that there was a strong connection there. And so, if anything, I like the fact that this film that we just talked about here, Sort of Trust, allowed for them to work together in a film, in kind of in this capacity, so that we're able to kind of talk about it here on the show. Yeah. So to that end, I'm thrilled that for the final project they got to work together on, it was this.
She called him her muse.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
That is very sweet.
You're my muse, Andy.
If I say you're mine, does that defeat the purpose of muses?
Yeah, it totally does. Totally does. Don't say that.
Okay.
Don't say, don't say any of that.
I'll just take it.
How to do it award season?
This wasn't a film that found a huge audience. And because of that, as I said last week, it didn't receive a lot of awards or nominations, but it did have more than Outside In. 4 wins, 4 other nominations. At the Clotrudis Awards, it was nominated for Best Performance by an Ensemble Cast, but lost to Parasite.
But unfortunately, that's a whole made-up word, so nobody really knew what that was.
The Clotrudis Awards.
The Clotrudis Society of Independent Film, a nonprofit organization that teaches audiences to view films actively.
Right. It's an independent film award thing back in the East Coast, I think. At the Film Independent Spirit Awards, it was nominated for Best Editing, but lost to Uncut Gems. At the Gijón International Film Festival, Marc Maron won Best Actor and Lynn Shelton won Best Screenplay. Oddly, it didn't, in the award list, it didn't credit her co-writer, Mike O'Brien. I don't know if there's a reason for that or not, but he wasn't credited as part of the win for that. It was nominated for Best Film, but lost to Vitalina Varela. At the Indiana Film Journalists Association, Maron was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Adam Driver in Marriage Story. At the Sidewalk Film Festival, it won the Audience Choice Award for Best Narrative Feature, and at the Traverse City Film Festival, Lynn Shelton won for Best U.S. Fiction for this film. So, it's a lot of the smaller film festival types of awards that it's winning. That speaks, I think, largely to the audience that found this film.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's the same problem we talked about last week, that if people don't see it, does it really exist? How to do at the box office.
Shelton's final film was still in those micro-budget numbers. I can't be 100% sure of this, but I did find a figure of $550,000 for the budget, which is pretty much, in today's dollars, about the same amount of money. Like all of our others, this film did have a very limited release after premiering at South by Southwest on July 12th, 2019, opposite Crawl and Stuber. Sadly, this one never really found its audience, only earning $323,000 at the box office. That puts the film at an adjusted loss per finished minute of $2,500. It's a shame because Shelton certainly creates stories with unique characters. It just always seemed difficult for really to get them in front of audiences.
Ugh, makes me sad.
Yeah.
We should, I'm so glad that we talked about it. And again, these last two movies of Shelton's have been really redemptive in terms of just why we did this series. I'm so glad to have been introduced to Shelton's work, and I'm kind of sad it's over. For now.
That's right. I think that there is talk about coming back to do more of her movies at some point.
At some point. Shall we take it to the mat?
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this fair show. Swipe over in your show notes, tap the word Flickchart, and you'll be taken straight to the Sword of Trust film entry in the Flickchart database, where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours.
All right. First up, we have Sword of Trust or Wall Street.
Oh, I'd watch Sword of Trust. Easy.
Yeah, I probably would too. Sword of Trust or Fargo.
Fargo.
It's a tricky block that we keep running into. Yeah.
It is a tricky block. That's going to make me sad, but that's where we are.
Fargo for sure. Sword of Trust or the Maltese Falcon. Maltese Falcon for me.
Yeah.
Sword of Trust or the Town.
Probably the Town.
The Town for me. Yeah. Sword of Trust or Zero Grad.
That is good. Good Soviet. I would watch Sword of Trust first.
I will too. Sword of Trust or True Romance. I will say True Romance.
Yeah, True Romance.
Sword of Trust or Being John Malkovich.
Being John Malkovich.
Being John Malkovich. Sword of Trust or Dolomite is my name.
Sword of Trust.
Oh, wow. Dolomite is my name for sure.
I'll give it to you.
Oh, that was easy. Sword of Trust or Gone Girl.
Gone Girl.
Gone Girl. That puts Sword of Trust in spot 240 on our chart. 240 out of 514 films. That's about a 53%.
Well, it's lower than mine. I didn't run into that Fargo block. How'd it do on your list?
The Fargo block hurts. I did, it's better. Landed in spot 1290 out of 4651. That's about a 72% for me.
Okay, so we're right about in the same place. It's 367 out of 1509, which puts it at a 76%, according to the algorithm. I should head over to letterboxd.com/thenextreel, and I should make this a 4-star film. And you know what, Andy? I'm going to do exactly that. 4 stars and a heart for me.
4 stars and a heart. For me, it's not quite there. It's 3.5. I really enjoy it. It's fun. It just, the ending kind of falls apart. So 3.5 stars and a heart for me.
All right. Well, I love the movie. I had a great time with it. Falls apart at the end. Glad we have Shelton. Really curious what we're going to do next.
I know. This is exciting. We are ending this season with a series provided by Ben Lott, one of our listeners, who came up with the idea of a series called Spoiled, period. Rotten, ? It's about films with twist endings. And the idea is, if you know the twist ending, if it's been spoiled for you, is the film just rotten or does it still hold up? So we are each coming to this. We are each bringing a surprise film. The other one does not know what our pick is. And we are going to review these two films, and we're going to see if basically how well they hold up now that we know how it ends.
Okay. Were there any sorts of rules that you put forth as you were thinking about what your movie was going to be? And we should say, we don't know each other's picks.
That's right. It's just, we're about to announce them.
Yeah.
This is exciting. No, the only rule I had was I was trying to come up with a film that had a twist ending that I haven't rewatched since I first saw it, or maybe I have, but it's been a very long time. And my recollection is that it held up, or that it still holds up in my brain. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to think, like, as I rewatch it, knowing the ending, if it's going to work for me still. That was really kind of the only rule that I set in place.
I think so. I also, the only other thing I added was, is it like, it feels like a movie that deserves to be talked about in our catalog. Like, it feels like it's a hole in our catalog. Like, I wanted to see the artwork for this movie on our website. That's my thing.
So I'm going to guess yours then. You're doing the Emoji Movie, right?
How did you know it was the poop emoji all along?
That's right. All right. So,
all right.
You ready? Should we do this?
Are we going to do it at the same time, or are we going to? Do you want to guess the movie? What's the drill?
Okay. Well, let's guess. Let's see if we can guess what it is.
Okay. Can you guess mine?
Oh, you. All right, you got to give me a few clues. Give me some clues. What year was yours?
Year was 2000.
2000, and it has a twist ending.
I would say 2000, and it is genuinely twisty. Twisty from opening frame.
Okay.
I would say it is a director we've certainly talked about before. There's a sort of a principal trio in the film, and two people in that trio starred together in a massively successful series, original science fiction series. And that's a lot.
Well, it's not, let's see. It's not A Beautiful Mind, because that was after 2000. I was just thinking of Paul Bettany. You said two of them had starred together in a massive science series. And so I went to
cinematography Vision. By Wally Pfister.
Wally Pfister, Christopher Nolan, 2000.
You're right there, man. You're sitting on top of it. If only you could take a Polaroid of it and tell it not to believe your lies.
So Memento. Interesting. Okay. Was that, gosh, my brain says that was 99, but I think you're right. I think it is 2000.
Well, I'm looking at it on IMDb.
Yeah, then you're probably right. Okay. Memento. Okay.
Memento.
This is thrilling.
Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, Joe Pantoliano.
I have the DVD release of that came out where Christopher Nolan, as a bonus feature, included an Easter egg where you can actually have the film play in chronological order.
I heard that existed. I never had that Easter egg, and I would love to watch that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I did watch it at some point, and I just can't remember. I can't remember it.
It's a really interesting film because we talk about twist endings. I think because of the way the whole film is structured, it's sort of pre-Tenet, right?
Yeah.
And so, knowing the ending doesn't necessarily imply that you understand the movie. So it's really fun to sort of revisit this based on the short story that Jonathan Nolan wrote, Memento Mori. Christopher Nolan wrote the screenplay and directed the film. So I'm very excited to talk about this one, get it on the list. Is it ruined if you know the gag about the film structure and the end? That's the question.
I can't wait to talk about that one.
What do you got?
All right, you ready for mine? Mine is a 2003 film. 2003, okay. James Mangold directed it. We like James Mangold. We've talked about him
quite a bit.
I think we've talked about him. We let's see.
Didn't we do Logan?
Was that a film board? I feel like we had so many other Wolverine movies, and I don't remember if Logan. I don't think Logan ended up being one of them.
So what was
the
he
Wolverine?
doing?
But he did do the Wolverine, so we did talk about that one.
Was there a twist ending to Walk the Line? I feel like we knew where that was going all along. What else did he do? In the late 90s, early 2000s? I don't even remember. Girl Interrupted?
No,
that was not 2003.
So cinematography, Feeding Papa Michael. I don't know if that's going to help you. Music by Alan Silvestri. If I say that Okay, I'm going to start naming some cast members, but I'm going to start low on the list. Okay?
Okay.
Jake Busey.
Jake Busey?
Yeah. John C. McGinley.
Uh-huh.
Clea Duvall.
Okay.
Alfred Molina. John Hawkes.
Is it raining all the time? What is
It's
They're in
raining all
that.
the time.
It's like in that hotel, and Ray Liotta is in it, and
Amanda Peet, Ray Liotta,
and
John Cusack.
And what is it called?
If I tell you Pruitt Taylor Vince, does that clue you in? Certainly it should to the ending of it, because or the big twist at the end.
Did you just spoil it for everybody? It is Identity.
But Pruitt Taylor, it is Identity. Yes, Identity. It is raining all the time at this Nevada motel.
Oh, rainy!
And there are 10 strangers who come together. They're all trying to figure out why they're kind of stuck here at this motel during this huge rainstorm. And then they're getting killed off one by one. And they're trying to figure out what the heck is happening and why. And, it's a film that I had so much fun with when it came out. I'm really curious to see how well it's going to hold up, knowing the big twist at the end. You've seen it, right?
Yes. What was I feel like I made that joke. There was another movie at a motel, and it just came out. It was a Netflix, not just, it was a couple of years ago now, and it was very vibrant marketing, and there was the whole thing behind the mirror. And do you remember what it was? Because I feel like Identity, I loved it when I saw it the first time when it was Identity.
All I can think of is Bad Times at the El Royale, which also takes place at a kind of a hotel motel.
Yeah, weird
with mirrors, people behind the mirrors. But
I'm excited
feel like
to watch.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I haven't seen Identity maybe since it came out.
Yeah,
so my memory of it is that it has come up in conversation and maybe in one of our SatMac games, but it feels a little bit more tip of the tongue than it probably should be. I love John Cusack. I think it's going to be fun to revisit this one.
This is kind of toward the end of that period where John Cusack could carry a movie.
Yeah.
He kind of stopped and ended up doing a lot of things that I think he's just doing for the money. But I'm thrilled. So this is going to be a fun one to revisit. So that'll be the final series for our season.
Memento and Identity. And then we take our July hiatus and we take a break. So we'll talk more about what happens in July's when we get closer to it. But for now, next week, which one are we doing first? We should probably let's do them in chronological order. We should do Memento and then Identity, 2000 2003.
That sounds good.
All right.
Awake. Where am I? Some anonymous motel room.
I guess I've already told you about my condition.
Oh, well, only every time I see you.
It's my memory.
Amnesia.
No. It's different from that. I have no short-term memory. I know who I am. I know all about myself. Since my injury, I can't make new memories. Everything fades. I've told you this before, haven't I?
What's the last thing that you do remember?
My wife. Dying. My wife deserves vengeance. Doesn't make any difference whether I know about it. Just because there are things I don't remember doesn't make my actions meaningless.
All right. Well, all of you members, thank you so much for your support. As a reminder, we do have our monthly member bonus episode. The Big Heat just came out a few weeks ago, and we're going to be doing Naked Lunch as our June member bonus episode from our director David Cronenberg series. And we are already running polls by the time this comes out in our Discord group for our July hiatus member bonus that we're still going to drop during the hiatus for everybody. So we'll still get something in there along with some flick chart re-ranking so that people can kind of have something to listen to before we return in August. We've done a lot of movies as these member bonus episodes. They're a lot of fun to do, and it's just a great way to say thank you to all of you who are supporting the show. And we appreciate it. And for those of you who are interested, if you go to thenextreel.com/membership, you can learn about the different ways you can support by becoming a one-reeler or a two-reeler.
One-reelers get to go vote in our Saturday matinee polls, which are really fun. You get to choose the topic that we build our lists around, and we'll be doing it for this very movie this week. Don't forget to do the stuff you're supposed to do with podcasts. Rate, review, subscribe, and, of course, listen. But the thing we haven't done a great job of doing over the past is just reminding you that the best way you can help us is to tell your favorite movie lover about this show. Introduce them to the Next Reel family of podcasts, and let them know there are people who really love movies and love talking about movies, and that we produce an awful lot of shows. Hopefully there's something in here that we do that your favorite movie lover would also connect with. So thank you, everybody.
And speaking of producing an awful lot of movies, if you are subscribed to this podcast feed, remember, this is the Next Reel podcast feed. As we've expanded, we'll be doing a lot more shows. All of our shows are still in this feed. But if you really just want to focus on just the Film Board episodes or the Trailer Rewind episodes, we now have feeds for all of those individually in your podcatcher. You just search for it, and you can just subscribe to those individual shows if you're just overwhelmed by the number of shows we are cranking out. So we're trying to make that easy for you. So absolutely feel free to hop in and subscribe to whichever ones make the most sense for your listening habits.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Again, Letterboxd brings us some folks who disagree with us.
Oh, they don't like it.
They
a lot of people don't like
it. Yeah, they don't. I got a 0.5 star from Madeline.
Oh, Madeline. What's Madeline have to say?
Well, Madeline says, I get what it was going for, but for me personally, it fell so flat that it did not deliver. There was not a stretch of this longer than 10 minutes that was entertaining enough for me to avoid grabbing my phone. As I was watching it, I was wondering, is anything going to happen? Will it get funny? The humor is supposed to be subtle and kind of dry, and yeah, it could be funny, but it's not. And here's the money line. This is what allows Madeline to transcend these other reviewers. I feel like I wouldn't be friends with someone if they told me they'd recommend this movie. which maybe is taking relationship with film just a skosh far. But I get it. I get feeling strongly about movies. I have unpopular opinions about movies, so I get it. What's your 1 star?
I've got a 1 star by Ryan Bradley, who says, imagine a hero's quest where the quest is entirely pointless, and you'd still have a better plot than this movie.
Well played. Thanks, Letterboxd. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchase is made through our links. Give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We covered a lot of great movies that were adapted from other material in Season 10.
Our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals is where listeners can purchase the source material behind all our adapted film discussions. It helps support the show at no extra cost when you buy through our links.
In our foreign language Best Picture nominees series, we looked at several adaptations, including Z, The Postman Il Postino, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Letters from Iwo Jima.
We hit the high seas with In the Heart of the Sea from Nathaniel Philbrick's nonfiction book for our Aquatic Killers series.
Definitely a weaker entry in that series.
I bet the book is better.
Oh, me too.
Member bonus episodes featured adaptations like Gone Girl, The Russia House, Ivanhoe, The Hot Rock, The Big Heat, and Naked Lunch.
Oliver Stone brought not just original stories, but also adaptations like Conan the Barbarian, Scarface, Year of the Dragon, 8 Million Ways to Die, Talk Radio, and Born on the 4th of July.
Mary Herron's disturbingly insightful American Psycho was adapted from the Bret Easton Ellis book.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
Oh my God, it even has a watermark.
And of course, more Stephen King with The Mist, The Green Mile, and The Shawshank Redemption for our King a la Darabont series.
Find links to all of these books and more adapted films on our originals page. That's thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports our show.
Get the full list of books that we've talked about and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.